Everyone talks about building wealth. Almost no one talks about protecting the values that built it. This episode exposes the part of legacy planning most families overlook. Welcome to the Glovisor Podcast, where we explore business growth, communication, and personal development through real conversations with people that make an impact. Our guest is the founder of Trimaran Advisory Group, a firm dedicated to values-based legacy planning that looks beyond traditional business and estate strategies. Her work centers on understanding the unique dynamics, priorities, and long-term vision of families before addressing the financial structures behind them. As principal and lead financial advisor, she's built multi-generational relationships by focusing on what clients want and why it matters. She holds credentials as a family enterprise advisor, trust and estate practitioner, certified financial planner, and chartered life underwriter. Glovisor welcomes Sandy Pollack.
Thank you, Joe. It is a pleasure to be here with you today.
Let's begin. Please share with us a little bit more what you do.
We work with family business enterprise, multi-generational, and what I believe we do is we help business owners make wise decisions to protect and transition their wealth in a meaningful way so that they end up leaving a legacy that's not a legacy of lawyers.
So what inspired you to pursue this path?
Well, many years ago, when I graduated McGill University, a gentleman who was coaching me in squash suggested that I go into the insurance business. And I thought he was a little crazy because the last thing I wanted to do was talk about death. And quite frankly, he was an incredible human being and had a lot of experience in the estate planning area. So interviewed various firms that started originally in Montreal and realized that planning was more than just about death. It was really about life. And it was about what was the purpose of one's wealth. And so, whereas originally I started solely in the insurance industry, I kept seeing that there was a lot more to planning than just looking at solving a tax issue with life insurance. It was really trying to understand the history of someone's wealth, the history of a business, the grit, the failures, the stories, the hopes, the dreams that they had, because quite often you have a lot of entrepreneurs that they start a business with the sole intention of putting food on the table. Joe, that's it. And they fail and they keep trying and they keep trying. And then over time, it grows into something that more often than not exceeds their expectations, and it's beyond financial security. It's really about financial independence. And then they realize that they have excess because there's only so much you can eat. There's only so much of a life where, yes, you might be a car person or a cottage person or a boat person, but they realize that, geez, I've got a lot more that's going to extend beyond my lifetime. And how do I take care of this? And the first thing that comes up is, well, geez, there's taxes. And how do you plan for estate taxes? But I say, let's go a little bit deeper than estate taxes, because I have seen the most incredible estate tax plans with trusts and trustees, and yet a family ends up suing each other, and there ends up being fighting, and you'll have inheritors that are unexpectedly receive this enormous amount of money that they've never been taught about how to manage it. They don't know the history of it. They don't know the stories behind it. And so it can almost be like a crater that's landed in their backyard, and they're supposed to do something with it. And I felt that there had to be more to planning than that. And so over many years of seeing some of the destruction, some plans working, many not, I decided to take a different approach to my practice. And that was dealing with family business transition and getting families more involved, and I would say unwrapping what they had. Because quite often in the world today, it's rude to talk about money. I mean, we have these things called money scripts, and depending on how we grew up, did we grow up with money? Did we grow up without money? Did our parents argue about bills? Did our parents not say anything? Really ends up impacting someone's relationship with their own career, their own business, their own relationship with money. And more often than not, it can be very unhealthy. And yet, money is what makes the world go round. It's what we use to buy groceries, to fill up fuel in our car. And so we transitioned our practice into continuing estate planning, but also focusing on multi-generational wealth, multi-generational family business succession, so that the person that built it can have more clarity, have more comfort, and also have more meaning in what he created, so that he doesn't leave his family a mess.
Who is the person that should be reaching out to you?
I would say that it would be someone who has a successful business, a minimum of five years old, minimum, because they've done the trials and the tribulations, and hopefully they're still in business. They start thinking about what are they going to do with this? And it could be even 10 or 15 years that they've been managing this business. They may have children involved. They may not. They're starting to think about succession. Do I want to keep going till I'm 80 years old? What if something happens to me? What if I get hit by a Mack truck? How will this business continue without me? And I think for the ideal client for our group, it's someone that loves money and loves people and really cares about something that they've built, and they want it to transcend and mitigate any kind of risk possible.
I like the statement that you mentioned. It says people with excess. You have extra, more. Because very often I think that when we look at money, we look at it as a big picture, and then we own it all and we have it all, and that's all there's to it. But as you mentioned, there's only so much you could eat. There's only so many boats you can purchase. So I love that, because it's so true. Because I think at that moment, once you put it into that context, you start to think, wow, there is more and beyond that I should be considering. Do you think that most clients that come to you are coming to you too late?
Don't know. I think it depends on where that person is at financially. It astounds me the number of very successful entrepreneurial families that the founders doesn't have a will, or the will hasn't been updated. It astounds me. And all that ends up happening is things change. Like when you first start your business to when your business is 5 years old to 10 to 15 to 20, you have it could expand. There could be different divisions, particularly with family business. They could own property, right? They have real estate. Then they have one business. They might decide to make horizontal changes and have another business, or vertical marketing. So it ends up being multidimensional. And I think that there's never a perfect time to say, I'm ready, it's time to plan. I think it's asking, I would look at this as a question. When's the best time to plant a tree? Is when's the best time to plan? And I'll ask you this, when's the best time to plant a tree, Joe?
It was 20 years ago.
And if not, today. So sometimes you just have to start and have the courage to say, you know what, maybe some of the decisions that I've made 5 years ago or 10 years ago aren't relevant, aren't sustainable. Maybe I have another spouse, and all of a sudden my wills I haven't updated, and it's still leaving certain things to my ex. Or maybe after 20 years, I have a second family. You have an I do and an I do again. And truly, when you have these changes in your life, are the big signs to say, let's kind of open up our planning and make sure things are still relevant and sustainable based on the client's values and the client's vision and the client's goals. And most importantly, the relational capital that's there. And that has to do with the spouse, the children, if they have any, some stakeholders in their business. It could be some key people. So planning is one of those things that it doesn't hurt to open up the book of planning today. And that often starts with just a discovery meeting. And what we found is that clients usually come to us because they have a great accountant, they have a great lawyer, but they feel there's something missing. They feel, I think I got it together, but there's something missing. And most often I find that you can have the best practitioners in the world, but no one really asks them about the history of their wealth, why they created what they did, how they feel about their family, how they feel about their kids. Are they prepared? Are their children prepared? And if they're not, what can they explore to create stronger relationships in the family? Because money can also be a tool that, if you don't plan properly, particularly with your wealth, it can actually make your family become more apart and distant, because we try to give our kids opportunities. So they end up going out of the country and they end up going to another state. And all of a sudden, this closeness, you have to work at a little harder when you have wealth than when you don't have.
If one of our listeners wanted to work with you, what would that journey look like?
Well, if anyone wants to work with us, we have what's called an initial meeting to see if we're the right fit, because we may not be the right fit for everyone. And why did they reach out? And sometimes I'm not the right fit, and we can refer them to other advisors. If we determine in that initial meeting that we are the right fit and we go through our process, step one is discovery. And the discovery process is one where we spend a lot of time asking, I would say, a lot of open-ended questions, understanding their journey from how they grew up to how they built their business to why, to where it's at today, to how they feel, some of the challenges along the way, and what are their hopes and dreams for themselves and their families. And also during discovery, we get all the stuff. We get, the wills, financial statements, structures. We get all that, but that we don't even broach in the discovery meeting. The discovery meeting is more qualitative, and the quantitative information follows. Once we've gone through the discovery meeting, and sometimes it's 2 or 3. And if it's a family, we'll have a meeting with each member of the family, each of the stakeholders. And that might be children that are active in the business, children that aren't, which is very important, the spouse. And I was at a conference the other week, and someone mentioned something called the silent asset class, which is the spouse, and how important that silent asset class is. And it's so important to hear their thoughts, because they have a different lens than, let's say, the business owner that's involved in the day-to-day running of the business. And more often than not, I call that the spouse, the CEO, the chief emotional officer. And the brain is a very funny thing, Joe, because it doesn't necessarily make decisions. If you have a logical decision and you're emotional, emotion trumps logic every single time. I don't know why, but that is just how our brain works with this little thing called an amygdala. And I think it's important to understand that the stakeholders aren't necessarily those that are involved in the family business. It's the family. And what constitutes the family depends on the size of the family business enterprise. But understanding what's keeping them awake at night, and there's a lot keeping them awake at night. So once we go through discovery, and again, it could be interviewing all family members, all stakeholders, we come up with a report. And in the report, we come up with what are the holes in their planning and some possible recommendations to further explore. And some of that could be family meetings, looking at family governance, shareholder agreements, are those properly funded, financial literacy for their children. It astounds me how many people in today's world are being barraged with misinformation. I had one Generation 3 client say to me, well, no, I don't pay the balances off my credit card statement, because isn't that a way to get a better credit rating? So I only pay the minimum. And there he was paying 27% interest on a Visa, thinking he was doing a good thing, until I explained to him how, the purpose of a credit card, how it works, how the bank gets paid. And after that meeting, it wasn't that this person didn't have the money in their account. They had the money in their account. They just thought that was good financial planning. And we were able to educate that individual so that all of a sudden he became a little more savvy when it came to, financial fluency. So they're all different avenues, but the real key of everything is truly taking the time to understand the client's values, their vision, and their goals for themselves, as well as their family and their business.
It sounds like a very comprehensive discovery process. Would you be able to share with us a success story?
Well, I had a situation of 2 brothers and a brother-in-law. 2 brothers and 2 brother-in-laws. It started a business together, and it was very successful. And they had 7 children actually active in the business. And they had no insurance. They had no shareholder agreement. They were looking at family business transition. Their children are all in their 20s, very actively engaged, and didn't even have wills. So we did some work. We were able to secure appropriate life insurance for them. It took many follow-ups for them to finally get their wills in order. And this again is in North America. And unfortunately, one of them was on vacation in France and had a brain aneurysm and died. And all of a sudden, everybody was scrambling. Before that person died, we were starting to meet with the next generation, generation two, the rising generation, to establish what we called some governance. Like, how are we going to work together? And the four brothers said, well, listen, we had a secret sauce. And I said, well, what was your secret sauce? And what they shared with me, which was so unique, was that they said in another culture, they had a blind eye. Well, tell me more. We don't look at what each of us has. We all work in tandem together. And what one person chooses to do with their income or their profits we don't really care about that. We have complete trust. Everything is equal. So there was never any jealousy or envy. And I said, so among all these children, do you think that could happen? That they're just like you? And they both started laughing. And they said, of course not, because they're all so different, right? And so I said, so how are they going to work together? And we brought up the idea of governance. And so we had many meetings with this rising generation as to how they felt about their dads. What did they think? What were their strengths? What did they think the weaknesses were of their fathers? And what was the vision that they had for this family business that was growing? And we spent about a meeting a month where they were able to unpack. We even discussed things like conflicts. And how do you feel about conflicts? And some said, oh my God, I avoid it. And we talked about, well, was it a people conflict issue or was it like an issue, like just an issue of a conflict? Anyways, over time, we were able to actually start creating family business rules, which is governance, how they would handle things of certain scenarios, what the family mission statement was, what would be what I would call their compass, so that if anybody veered off, what was baked into the family governance that everyone could go to if they did have a question. And we talked about things ranging from, what if one of this generation two has a relationship with an employee? Is that okay? Well, let's talk about it. Should that be that it's like off the map? And anyways, we had a lot of different conversations and came up with a governance plan that everyone was committed to, that everyone felt they were a part of. And I think that's the other thing that we forget is when we're talking about succession planning and estate planning, it's not about for your kids or to your kids, but sometimes it's about with your children so that they are empowered and part of that process. And in this case, generation two is running the business, has grown the business tremendously. They have this family business rules that's basically tailored to that particular family and are flourishing. And I think that was very rewarding to see. But it took a lot of work, a lot of questions, a lot of appreciative inquiry, because it's not about what a family is doing wrong. It's what is a family doing right? And how can we take those strengths and really deploy them in a way that will create a bigger future for them? And all that the wealth does, more often than not, Joe, what I think, in my personal and humble opinion, is, well, it just softens the edges of life. It's all it's supposed to do. And it's so important that people have purpose and that people develop purpose and confidence and clarity, because being a part of a family that has multi-generational wealth, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5th generation, there's a lot of stresses and a lot of things that people are not aware of. And they think, oh, you're so lucky because you're born into this family. But they are living under a shadow. And usually it's a shadow of dad who was so successful, so that if you're able to continue that, they'll say, oh, you only did that because of your father. And if they don't, well, you only failed because of you. And they don't understand that that family wealth and family transition in a business is very complex. And they need to be supportive in a way that they can be the best version of themselves, but also have purpose. And it doesn't mean that they have to stay in a family business either. That maybe their pursuit is working in a nonprofit or managing a foundation that the family has created. But I think we do not give enough compassion and empathy to multi-generational wealth because there are so many different angles and pressures that they face unknowingly. Who's their friend? Is it because they have this last name, or is it because it's really who they are? So I find that when you're planning and in many aspects, generation 1, generation 2, generation 3, it's really important that their advisors understand that each individual in a family has their own unique personality. And some of them need the support. Maybe it's coaching, maybe it's financial fluency, planning, whatever, so that they are empowered to make decisions and be the best version of themselves so that they can make a difference in the world.
If listeners remember only one thing from today's conversation, what do you hope that message is?
Be courageous to communicate with your children about your history, about your failures, about money in a way that is parallel to the value system that has brought you to where you are today. And have the courage to open up that conversation, not based on numbers, but based on stories.
That's great advice. So, Sandy, where can our audience connect with you, learn more about your work, and continue this conversation?
Well, I wrote a book, Joe, called Don't Leave a Mess, How to Disaster-Proof Your Family Legacy, which you can get on Amazon, or you can go on www.don'tleaveamess.ca, which is our website that will take you to Amazon wherever you are in the world, in Canada and US and beyond, as well as there are some articles and podcasts about planning and how planning doesn't have to be like going for a root canal. It can actually be something that can bring families together. And I hope that is my gift to the world was this book, which is available as well in audio.
I love the title. That was fantastic. So, Sandy, thank you so much for joining us.
It has been a true delight, Joe. I'm trying to get this message out because I feel very strongly that people that have excess wealth, it is their responsibility to leave a legacy of love and not a legacy of lawyers. And with that, I say thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone, for listening. If this episode inspired you, share it with someone who needs it. And don't forget to follow the Glovisor Podcast for more conversations that make an impact. Till the next time.